But first to tonight's Scientific Chicago.
Supporting science and discovery in Chicago, the Elizabeth Morris Genius Charitable Trust is the lead underwriter of Scientific Chicago and is a major supporter of all science programming produced and presented by WTTW.
Scientists have long known that diamonds could be used to make superior semiconductors, the foundation of all modern electronics. The problem? Diamonds are expensive. Our next guest believes he and his colleagues at Argonne National Laboratory have finally come up with a way of making diamond semiconductors commercially viable, a development that could herald a new diamond age of electronics. He was also recently named as one of Forbes magazine's 30 Under 30 and as one of the top innovators and entrepreneurs in the country. Adam Kahn is CEO of Acon Technologies, which is collaborating with Argonne on the project, and Adam Kahn joins us now. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
First of all, basic lesson, remind us what a semiconductor is.
Sure. So semiconductor is somewhere between an insulator and a conductor. We say semiconductor because it can actually be tuned to either be more conducting or less conducting, depending on what the end goal is.
And most semiconductors are made of some kind of material, most commonly silicon. Why is silicon so popular, so widely used?
So actually, interesting story. Silicon wasn't originally the main choice for modern semiconductor electronics. It was actually a material called germanium. Silicon was believed to be too expensive to be commercially useful. Here we are 60 years later, where silicon is now over 95% of all applications. It's the primary material used. So diamond actually has a similar sort of story, where originally diamond was believed to be too expensive to be commercialized, where now what we're seeing is we can actually produce diamond in very thin layers, very cost effectively, and actually make it conduct better than silicon.
Okay, let's stick with that. Why is diamond a better material than silicon?
Essentially for two reasons. One, diamond is actually much more heat efficient. It can transfer heat approximately 22 times more efficiently than silicon, 5 times more than that of copper. But above and beyond that, actually, diamond allows you to make thinner devices which have increased performance capability. For example, diamond can be tuned to drive circuits up to 400 gigahertz, where right now silicon is sort of limited to single-digit gigahertz in application, and that's just one particular aspect.
So, first of all, let's two things you just mentioned. Number one, the thickness. How much thinner could a diamond semiconductor be than a silicon?
So what we've actually fabricated and demonstrated is that diamond semiconductor can be over 1,000 times thinner for that same level of functionality as its silicon counterpart.
1,000 times thinner. So
yes.
that means, you know, all the devices that rely on semiconductors could continue to shrink and shrink and shrink.
Indeed.
And the other point you made was that silicon, you're saying it's basically reaching its capacity in terms of what it's able to do?
Right, from two levels. One is that devices continue to become thinner and thinner. Our phones are now both video players, MP3 players. Additionally, they're GPS, Wi-Fi connected. So we have increased functionality in smaller areas. So that's really where this heat becomes a major issue, because now, as you'll notice from using your phone for just a few minutes, it becomes hot to the touch. Similarly, on larger systems like data centers, of the 120 billion kilowatt hours of electricity consumed by these data centers, approximately 50% of that goes to thermal management or cooling.
So that thermal cooling aspect of it, whether in our smartphones or computers, etc., that would diminish as a need.
Certainly, and it can also fuel the next generations of devices, because, as I mentioned, we're going thinner and thinner and thinner, and for that trend to continue, something has to shift in terms of the performance capability and the material.
Okay, let's back up to something you just touched on. And when you say diamond, the first thing most people think of is expensive. Right. How do you make this technology widespread and affordable?
So when we think of diamond, we think of the gemstone, which takes millions of years and tremendous amounts of pressure from the earth. What researchers have actually done over the last 20 years, and I don't mean to speak out of turn, but rather improve upon Mother Nature's creation, where we can actually make diamond more perfect from a crystalline perspective and do it very cost effectively and actually deposit these in very thin layers. So now diamond doesn't take so long, but we still have that same material property that we would from the natural version.
Okay, so you brought in a couple of things that you wanted to show, and tell me me what it is that I'm holding.
So actually, this is diamond thin film. This is diamond on a silicon carrier, and these are actually diode pieces we fabricated on this. And diodes do different functions, but in this case, it attenuates a specific signal. And this is what we were actually showing, where we highlighted that diamond can be 1,000 times thinner, but also carry over 2 million times the current carrying capability. So it makes it more power efficient as well as compared to the silicon.
So this is one of the discs where you have superimposed this thin layer of diamond, and it now has the capacity to act as a semiconductor and receive programming and all that other business, and so you brought in this piece, and it's basically seems completely transparent. Mm-hmm. What am I holding?
So this is actually diamond on fused silica, or diamond on glass, and for the first time we have completely transparent electronics where we can have that same functionality as silicon but in a completely transparent form. So for applications like Google Glass, where you're actually wearing this but you also want to have electronics integrated seamlessly with the actual glass, it allows you to do so. And not only that, but diamond's actually a very hard material, so it's scratch resistant too, another important facet for...
Okay, so this clear thing that I was holding, you're saying it too has a thin layer of diamond material that would function in smartphones, computers, and so forth.
Correct.
All right. Well, listen, as I was doing research on this for this segment, I came across articles as far back as 2003, basically saying that we're on the dawn of a diamond age, and exactly the way you're talking about. Here's an article from Wired magazine, from the cover of Wired magazine from 2003. Why now? Why not back in 2003?
So there were some historical limitations to enabling diamond, chiefly being able to put diamond down at a temperature in which it doesn't destroy the underlying electronics, about 400 degrees Celsius, which was recently obtained via the argon discovery, and also making diamond conduct more improved as compared to silicon. N-type doping is what we call it in diamond, and that's also only been recently discovered in 2011 by my company, Acon Technologies.
So let's take it back to the average person. How big a sea change would it mean for the average consumer, the average user of electronics?
So what I like to think of is it's not sort of a seismic shift away from silicon, but rather continuing that platform. There's a tremendous amount of investment that's gone into silicon, billions and billions of dollars, in addition to intellectual property. So what we want to do is to begin to put diamond, integrating it with silicon to allow it to be more thermally efficient while building towards an all-diamond chip. So over the next 5 years, I think we're going to start seeing, from a consumer perspective, diamond increasingly used in these devices.
And so in terms of the commercial viability of it, this transition you're talking about, what? It'll mean smaller devices? Will it mean faster devices?
Indeed. Orders of magnitude faster, devices that are dramatically more power efficient, more heat efficient, and also, more importantly, from an environmental perspective, much less producing of electronic waste, where convection cooling is the primarily way to do thermal management in these devices. So these are all plastics that aren't easily recycled. About 50 million tons each year of electronics waste is produced, where only about 15% of that's recycled. The rest of it's just burnt and in the form of pollutants traveling in the jet stream.
So this is what? This would not need to be recycled as often, or?
It'll be more easily recycled.
Oh, more easily recycled. I see. Okay. Well, listen, you're a pretty hot property right now. As we mentioned, you were named by Forbes magazine as 30 under 30 in your field. Does that mean you have investors lined up around the block? I mean, what is the real-world impact of that designation, that honor?
Well, thank you. I prefer to think of it as a validation of our efforts. This is actually the 10th year I've been studying diamond, the 7th year that our company's been incorporated. So I think
the 10th year you've been studying diamonds. You're 29.
Yes.
You've been studying them since you were 19?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
What got you interested in studying diamonds?
I read a very interesting paper while I was an undergraduate at the University of Illinois at Chicago. At the time, I was talking about diamond as a superconducting material, but actually what we found by looking at it a little bit deeper is that, wow, diamond really has the potential to change things in the semiconductor world. So I thought that this is an opportunity that, really not a lot of people are working on, but it has a high value proposition. I thought, this is something I need to focus all of my energy on.
So what was your undergraduate major at the UIC?
I double majored in physics and electrical engineering.
I see. Sounds perfect. You mentioned to the producer that you also think Google Glass would be a natural fit for this type of technology. Are you talking to Google?
We're sort of tightening up our intellectual property before formally engaging them. But yes, I think this is a really ideal fit. And it's interesting because Google actually just purchased some intellectual property for transparent metal. So now we have transparent electronics, transparent metal, the potential for a fully transparent circuit.
Well, you're clearly a pretty talented scientist and entrepreneur, but don't those roles require different skill sets?
Yes, indeed. One is a left brain and the other is the right brain.
Which comes first for you, the scientific aspect of it, or the more creative sort of?
For me, it's always been the science, and it's sort of coincidence that it's actually quite lucrative.
See, Adam Kahn, all the best to you. Really interesting stuff that you're working on, obviously.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And up next, winter swimming in Lake Michigan. Yes, swimming. Stay with us.
Scientific Chicago is made possible in part by the Russell and Josephine Cott Memorial Charitable Trust and by Motorola Solutions.